Hi, everyone. Welcome. Do I need to do anything to turn this on? Okay. No problem. There we go. There's our very long-winded subject. So we are going to be discussing a metrics-powered customer journey today. And I have a feeling probably a good number of you in the room are in sales or marketing. So this session is somewhat geared towards you. But I think that it's a more global message as well for operators in the room. So you've probably seen the NAHB disclosure if you guys have been to any of our sessions in the last day. So I'm Pierrette Tierney. I am the Vice President of Business Development at Magleby Construction. And I also have a background in production home building. And I moved to Park City about 3.5 years ago and had the opportunity to meet Bassam Salem, who is with AtlasRTX.
Hello, everyone. It's wonderful to see familiar faces in the audience. I'm Bassam Salem, CEO of AtlasRTX. As Pierrette said, we're based in Park City, Utah, and it's going to be fun sharing some numbers with you this afternoon. So hopefully everyone's going to be awake and ready to do some math.
So continuing education credit disclaimers for all of those that want to take detailed notes on this. So I also wanted to preface, since this is kind of a tech presentation, we have made it easy for you. Rather than everyone having to take photos throughout the presentation of all of our slides, although very well trained, good job guys, if you put this number in your phone and text your full name, so for example, I would put that number in, I would text Pierrette Tierney to that number, we'll have you in our system and we will send you a digital copy of this entire presentation. So you don't have to take the screenshots that are blurry and you can't read them anyway 2 days from now. And then the other thing that you can do with this number is if you think of questions throughout our presentation, you can text your question in, and at the end we'll do a live Q&A based on the questions that we're aggregating from the room. So we're going to make this like super high tech for you today.
Is that cool or what? Yeah, everywhere else we tell you, can you please put your phones away and pay attention? Here we're telling you, please pull your phones out and text us. So. Yeah,
absolutely. So we're going to be turning a few things on its head today. So when we were trying to figure out the best way to present this, Bassam and I had talked about who is the modern consumer today? Why is technology important? And I had actually a couple months ago done a presentation for the AtlasRTX team about the modern consumer. So I frantically did a bunch of research, and I quickly figured out that there were about these six things that kept coming up in every research, kind of iteration that I did. And so in the presentation today, I want you to kind of take off your sales and marketing hat and put on your consumer hat. Think about the last purchase you made, or perhaps a brand that you're currently interacting with and thinking about a purchase, and how you're interacting with that brand and how you expect to be receiving information. So let's kind of break down each of these individual. So consumers are in control. The days of Mad Men when ad agencies just put out information and everyone said, oh, that's great, let's buy that. It's not happening anymore. Consumers are doing their research and they're expecting a specific shopping experience. And I think what's scary about this is the third bullet point. If you lose them, it's likely not just for a single purchase, but for a very long time and sometimes forever. Consumers are making that decision a lot of times based simply on the content that they're seeing in whatever medium they're seeking it, and they have a lot of options. Omni-channel shopping, so this is an interesting one. Consumers are expecting the same experience regardless of how and where they're interacting with your brand. So you can't just have a really phenomenal social media site and then they come to your retail experience and it's subpar. The expectation from marketers these days is that you have to have a consistent brand presence, regardless of if they're finding you on a website or through social media or in a retail environment. Content is king. Again, most people are doing their shopping live, whenever they want, wherever they want. And you have to have something that brings them into your business, something that's slightly emotional, something that engages them at a different level, because what we've talked about is consumers they're not engaging with people until they're further down the funnel. So where they used to come into Best Buy to get information on a specific product, and that was their first stop, now they're pulling all of that research forward before they're even willing to engage with a human or a sales associate or what have you. Voice search is on the rise. I mean, think about how many times you've used your Siri or your Alexa. People want a simple, clean path to get to their finished product, and they're not willing to give you a whole lot of time to do it. Around the clock shopping, how many of you have made a purchase in the last 24 hours outside of what we used to consider normal business hours, right? Probably about 50% of the room. People expect 24-hour service these days, and if you aren't delivering it, they'll go find it. It's a global experience. We were thinking about, I came from the Bay Area most recently, and that was probably where I was most exposed to a really diverse population of home buyers. But I think back to when I was in Las Vegas with Pulte Homes, and we had a lot of foreign language speakers, and it's no longer just the big cities. I would bet that most of you have foreign language speakers in your prospect base. The other thing that's really interesting is that 50% of millennials are going to be from a minority or ethnic group in the next couple years. And 1 out of 3 home buyers is a millennial. So if you want to target that group, you have to give them a cultural and language experience. The other thing that I really learned was they're much more likely to engage and most importantly, trust your organization if you can engage with them in their local language.
The crazy thing, if I could add to what Pierrette's saying here, is you'd think it would be Spanish and just Spanish, but it is incredible the number of languages that we see across markets these days. We're talking tens of languages from Farsi to Mandarin and otherwise. It's incredible.
And then social sharers. Social media, obviously, I kind of always say that it's like a necessary evil. I don't personally like to deal with it a whole lot. But how many of you in your business are using social media for marketing efforts? Most of you guys have figured this out, right? So not only is it a place where you have to engage with people and you have to consider that content experience and the omni-channel shopping, but the influencer experience is also real. So not only are these consumers making a decision on your brand, but they're sharing it with everyone else that they know. And people are taking advice from random strangers online, right? If you go to Yelp and a restaurant has a bad review from people you don't even know, you still consider that into your choices, right? So this is something that's really, really growing. The other thing that's interesting about social media, though, that I think the one piece that a lot of builders haven't yet engaged in that other companies are using it for is actually research and development. So you think about, all the money we spend sometimes on focus groups to find out if our product is right for us. Half the time you can put out posts on either or and get a pretty good filtered feedback session just through social. So that's something that I think a lot of people can consider, and the more data that goes into that, the better your results over time. I just thought this quote was very relevant for our business. There's a lot of things. We'll go out and we'll find building sciences and we'll make some advancements in the technology that we're putting into our homes, but we haven't really pulled that forward into the sales and marketing environment, and we're still doing things very similarly to the way we've done them for the last 20 years. So this is where, as I was in Park City and kind of thinking through the homebuyer channel and experience and connected with Bassam, this is a question, right? How does our industry support these people. They're not just shopping on Amazon and shopping in Nordstrom's. They're shopping for big purchases now. There's a ton of car companies that are selling cars 100% online and it shows up at your door. And I don't think home building is drastically far behind, but our technology is. So.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Pierrette.
Yeah.
So Pierrette really set the stage for the boring part of the presentation. We're going to do some numbers in a few minutes, and again, as Pierrette alluded, you don't need to write all of these things down because we will gladly share them with you after the fact. But the question we'd like the next part of the presentation to go to is, how does improving the experience that the modern consumer expects today, how does that impact the bottom line? So instead of just talking at a high level, we're going to try to quantify this for you and show you how it will make a difference in the dollars. But let's start with an acknowledgement here. As my friend Joel Shine of Woodside Homes likes to say, home building is exceptionally complicated. It's the only business that's three businesses in one. Three businesses in one. The one we all think about is the retail business. We all think about selling homes, right? We sell homes. That's a retail business. But to sell a home, you have to manufacture a home. You think about car companies, sorry, I'm going to stand up. Car companies, GM and Ford, they manufacture cars. They don't sell cars, right? They have dealer networks that sell cars. Home builders have to manufacture the house before they can sell the house. But before they can manufacture the house, they have to be in the real estate business. They have to figure out where to buy land, when to buy it, how much to pay for it, right? Very, very complicated to have all three aspects of these three entirely separate businesses somehow integrated with a financial model that makes sense. Today, we're going to cover a little bit of manufacturing and real estate, but knowing that most of you are likely in sales and marketing, let's focus on the retail side of the house, and that's the side of the house that touches the customer most, right? They touch that side of the home building experience most. So let's start out by defining the journey in a consistent way. We all have our notions of a retail journey. Every single person here has mapped this out, but we need to have a consistent one if we're going to talk about metrics for each. So we're going to talk about awareness, the customer being aware of your brand, right? They're out there, what options do I have? They select 2 or 3, and now they're considering which one is the right one for them, consideration. Then they go through the purchase process, how, what options, what floor plan, what model, and so on. Delivery. Delivery is a little bit more complicated again in home building because this is where all of the construction happens. So we have to build the house before we can deliver the home.
Yeah, it's a much longer
it's a little bit
segment
longer,
for
yes.
for us than it is other products.
Does it
right?
ship overnight via Amazon? No, you've got to wait for it. And then the one we all aspire to have at the end, which is advocacy. I'm so happy in my home. I was so happy with the experience that I'm an advocate for the brand. So this is the customer journey from the customer's perspective. As Pierrette alluded, you're going to think about it from the customer's perspective some of the time. And now let's think about it from the other side, because from our perspective as home builders, because what we're really trying to do is the customer has real-time objectives. They have an objective right this minute that they're trying to achieve. And if we fulfill that objective and delight them in fulfilling that objective, that is what we call a real-time experience. So the customer journey is a bunch of these real-time experiences in a sequence. And we're going to deconstruct that sequence and zoom in on just one portion of it, because we don't have 24 hours. So let's now look at it from our perspective. So from our perspective, we're going to come up with 5 stages, 5 portions of the experience that we're going to recognize. The first is attract. We want to attract the customer, making them aware of us, before someone else attracts the customer, right? Attract. Once we've attracted them and they're aware of our brand, they're now considering. We want to be able to engage them. We want to interact with our customer. answer their questions, compel them to purchase with us. We then go to transact, the sales process. We are now going to transact with them, put them under contract, so we can go to deliver, where we build the home and deliver it to them. Again, not FedEx or overnight, but it's still a delivery process. And finally, we're going to do this in such a delightful way, both pre-move-in and post-move-in, to get them to be an advocate. So attract, interact, transact, deliver, delight. Those are the 5 functional steps of the customer journey. And we're going to use that for a lot of the analysis that we're going to do. The idea, of course, is if we do a great job on the delight, we get the referral on the other side, and the cycle is virtuous, right? It's self-reinforcing. Okay, warning, math ahead. I was told that this is an important sign because it's 3 in the afternoon. We're going to do some math.
Yeah, and I was telling Bassam, when I was a VP of sales and marketing, one of the things that I found was hard was to get the attention and I guess the clout to go into my executive team and present things. And having some numbers behind it, spending some time with your VPs of finance, and having these hard facts definitely helps you in your efforts. So it was one of the things that I spent a lot of time focused in to understand how I could run the overall business to eventually become a division president. So it's hard to absorb, but it's worth it.
It's worth it, absolutely. So let's start at the top, the income statement. And don't worry, we're not going to do an accounting class and go through this step by step, but I want you guys to, let's start at the really high level and look at the home building business at that level. Revenue, cost of sales gives you gross profit. Operating expenses gives you net profit. How do you read this? Let's start with this 100%. Let's just look at the percents side here for a second. So out of every $100 of homes sold, so let's just assume we're selling $100 worth of homes. That way everything is out of 100. We're spending $81 on what's called cost of sales. Now you might think that that is sales. That's actually not sales. That's just cost of construction and land. It's called cost of sales for accounting reasons. So think about that.
Like your hard costs, right?
Hard costs, exactly.
Yeah.
So out of $100, 81 are going to the back end of the business, the manufacturing side and the real estate side, leaving $19 for the retail side. So if you think about it, you can almost take that $19 and make that the revenue of the retail side. Do you see what I mean? You're buying the land and you're building a house, and now you can make 19 bucks on that when we sell it. So the gross profit is actually what really matters on the sales side. And you'll see gross profit a lot here. And in fact, we're going to sort of flip the way you think about marketing and sales and metrics on its head when we use gross profit instead of cost. And you'll see that in a second. So sales, if you're wondering where the sales or marketing, everything that we frequently think about aside from the hard cost side is coming out of that operating expense. So out of the 19 bucks, we spend 11.5 on sales, marketing, finance, general and administrative, and owner compensation. So everything comes out of that 11, leaving us the 7.6. The question we want to pose is, what if instead of thinking about the cost of marketing, the cost of sale, the cost of every function, we actually focused on the return? What if instead of deconstructing the $11, what if we could deconstruct the 19 and see how the metrics we've been tracking all these years look so different when you're thinking about return instead of cost? And you'll see what I mean in just a second. So this slide has a lot. I say that just to warn you. Again, we will give you this at the end. I'm going to try to walk you through this step by step, but what I'm about to show you here is 15 different metrics. 15 different metrics on one slide. Hopefully everyone's awake for this, but we're going to cover 6 what we call fundamental metrics that should look really familiar. then 5 optimization metrics that are going to look a little less familiar, but you'll recognize them. And then we're going to talk about KPIs. Who knows what a KPI is? Perfect. Key performance indicator. The ultimate metrics. If there are 4 metrics to track around your business, these are going to be the ones. And they're not ones that you will have heard of, at least I contend, because we're going to, again, flip everything on its head. So let's start out with fundamental metrics. And you can see fundamental metrics number 2, 3, and 4. And these are ones all of us are familiar with, right? Everybody knows how many leads, how many prospects, and how many buyers they have in a period, right? We're all very comfortable with these. And for our unified nomenclature, leads, let's just use leads pre-model home visit. Let's use prospect once they're in the model home. And then customer, of course, is someone under contract, just in case we don't have that nomenclature. So not surprisingly, the first is visitors. Visitors, the notion of visitors is how many people have been exposed to my brand? How many people were exposed to my brand? Whether it be on a website, on a banner ad, on a sign, on a television, radio, whatever the mechanism is, how many visitors to my brand do I have? The 5th is one we don't think of as much. Fundamental metric number 5 is the price. We can't get these numbers to become financial if we don't go to price, right? Then we can't go to revenue if we don't go to price. So we have to account for price in our analysis. Price being the average price of a transaction. So let's just assume 400K in this particular example. Number 6 is another financial metric, and it's the only one that seems a little scary. We talked about that before. And it's gross profit. Gross profit is how much we're making after we've built the home on the piece of land. That's gross profit. Okay? So these 6 metrics are what we call the fundamental metrics. You have to measure these. You have to know these off the top of your head for your business today. Now, you might think, well, what was the whole journey thing about? Let's now map this and overlay it on the journey, and I hope we all have an epiphany here that it's all tied together. Because now we have attract, interact, transact, deliver, delight, and now we can start recognizing, well, what we call marketing today is all about attract, isn't it? Marketing is all about running campaigns to generate traffic that capture leads. That's marketing, that's the attract function. Interact is what we'd refer to as inside sales. You might call it online sales, right? It's the how can we interact with those leads and turn them into prospects, get them to schedule an appointment and keep an appointment. Make sense? We now call transact field sales or your community salespeople, right? These are the salespeople who are going to engage the prospects and try to turn them into buyers by signing the contracts. So you see how the flow matches the fundamental metrics. Land and construction is responsible for the deliver portion. The idea there is we take a buyer and turn them into an owner. And if we can delight that owner, customer service, and everything else in the journey, we can create advocates out of our owners. So it just ties everything together in one seamless journey, and we're not there yet. You'd think that that was enough builds, right? There should be a limit to the number of builds you can have. We're only about halfway there. So now we can move from the fundamental metrics to what we call optimization metrics. Optimization metrics, why? Because these are the metrics you have to optimize to change everything in your business. I can't will the leads to change. I can't will the buyers to change. I have to optimize something else. And that's what optimization metrics are. So we're going to talk about 5 optimization metrics. The first is one that most marketers should be familiar with, lead conversion. Lead conversion is how effectively am I taking that traffic and converting it to leads. So in this case, we had 100,000 visitors. We converted 300 leads. 0.3% is my lead conversion. Next, prospect conversion. right? I have 300 leads. How effectively am I converting those to prospects? I converted 75. 25% is my prospect conversion. Not surprisingly, buyer conversion is the last one in this funnel. I'm taking the 75 prospects, converting them into 15 buyers, therefore 20% buyer conversion. I hope all of this is making sense. We're almost there. Oops. The next one sounds like a pigeon.
I know. I have a bird on the stage. The fourth, now how do you measure the effectiveness of land and construction in a way that makes this financially sensible? The most sensible optimization metric is gross margin. And that's why you'll always hear the finance people talk about that. Because gross margin tells us, again, this is how much we can make out of this transaction. So it really matters. How effectively are we buying the land? How effectively are we building the home? So if we can keep the experience great while managing the costs here, that's how this business works. Yep. So gross margin, let's assume, there's no, I just picked that. Let's assume 18% is our gross margin, which by the way, is typical for home building. Some of you might be in the 20s, and if you are, awesome, good for you. Some of you are in the low teens, and if you are, it's okay, but you have some optimization you can do on gross margin. The last one is actually a non-financial one, and it's one I really believe in. It's a customer experience one, and that is Net Promoter Score. How delighted are your customers? How effective is customer service? If you look at each of the optimization metrics, they refer to the function in the journey that is above them, right? So each optimization metric maps. The cool thing, and this is what I love about this stuff, and if you're a math nerd like me, you're gonna love this. If you multiply all these numbers out, they actually equal the gross profit. So you take 100,000, you multiply that by 0.3%, it gives you the 300 leads. You multiply that by 0.25, it gives you the 75, and so on, and that would give you the $1,080,000 in gross profit. So you can derive the whole process to gross profit. As Pierrette said, that's a financial number that the finance and COO of the company care about, right? That's what matters. The cool thing is now we're almost there. We have 4 more, the KPIs. Now we can go back, and this is the part where all of you are gonna say, this doesn't sound right. So think through this. This is not cost per, this is now gross profit per. So I urge you to please open your minds to this because it flips things on its head. So if we have 1,080,000, let's just call it 1.0 million, 1.08 million, out of this use case, or this case where we have 15 buyers from 75 prospects at $400,000 a house, we can now go back and say, KPI number 4, how much gross profit am I making per buyer? In this particular case, we're making $72,000 per buyer. Okay, that's an important number to know. How much am I making for every buyer, right? If we don't know that number, we can't reverse engineer the rest of the sales and marketing funnel. So if you're wondering how I did that, $1,080,000 divided by 15 buyers gives you the $72,000. Anyone surprised at that number? No. Cool. Notice no one raised their hand. Let's now go to this one. Well, wait, if I'm making $72,000 per buyer and I got 15 buyers, I can now calculate how much gross profit I'm making per prospect. Per prospect. And that KPI is $14,400 per prospect. Every single person who visits my home with these metrics is worth $14,400 in gross profit, not in cost. Okay, let me ask you the question now. How many of you are surprised by that number? Cool, maybe half to 2/3 of the room. Let's make it even more surprising. Well then, if that's how much a prospect is worth, how much is a lead worth? $3,600. Again, not in cost, in gross profit.
that lead will eventually translate to gross profit if I can convert at these ratios. That lead is worth $3.6 thousand. Crazy, right? Finally, not surprisingly, well then, can I value my traffic from a gross profit perspective? Absolutely. Every single visitor to your site is worth, in this case, $10.8 thousand. Sorry, $10.8. Shoot. Wouldn't it be cool? Dang it. That would be surprising.
Yeah.
But be honest now, how many of you would have valued it that way? How many of you would have thought a visitor under these circumstances is worth $11 in gross profit? Not many, right? $11 in gross profit for every visitor if you can have those as your metrics. So we're going to focus today because we don't want to put you to sleep. I think 2 or 3 of you in the back are, but I don't want to put the rest of you to sleep. I'm kidding, by the way. I don't see anyone back there. So, we're just going to focus on one stage in the customer journey. We're going to focus on that marketing attract stage, taking visitors to leads. But hopefully, when we deconstruct this, you can see how you can exactly do the same thing for inside sales, field sales. We'll show you that. And in fact, if you reach out to us, you'll see through our system later, we'd be glad to help you with that as well. We actually have a spreadsheet like this that you can use, and we'll gladly just share this with you, where you can put the fundamental metrics in, and then it will tell you what your optimization metrics are and what your KPIs are for your
individual business.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you can work out these numbers for yourself as well and see how much you're making per everything. Okay. So let's focus on, I keep looking back there when I've got the screen right here. Sorry about that. So let's focus on marketing and awareness, right? That stage, which is all about how do we optimize that lead conversion metric, right? The one that we had that was 0.3%. And what I want to show you here, what Pierrette and I talked about is, if there's one theme to take away from this presentation, it's that small improvements in the customer experience and in these optimization metrics have huge results, huge returns. And we're going to show you the math. We'll literally do the math with you and show you. So we could talk about all sorts of channels, phone, email, form fills on your website. As you guys, some of you know, we do chatbots and artificial intelligence. So we're going to pick one that we're going to show you how we can impact directly, and that is live chat. So we're going to walk through a live chat example, but you can see how you can apply this exact same technique to any channel at all. So let's start out with our 100,000 visitors to our website, and we somehow generated 300 leads. You'll see how we'll reverse engineer this in a second out of those 100,000 visitors, which by the way is the 0.3% conversion. If you remember from the last slide, each lead had a gross profit value of $3,600, which is how we get to, if you multiply that out, then 1.08 million. Do you see how the numbers are still the same? We haven't changed them. What we're going to talk about today is how do we take that section in between and optimize it? Basically, how do we get more than 300 leads? That's how we optimize our conversion rate. How do we get more than 300 out of 100,000? Well, let's say that in this live chat scenario, we get 5% of visitors to click open, to chat with live chat. Let's pick the number 5%. So that gives us 5,000 what we'd call chat opens. 5,000 people out of the 100,000 open the chat. Let's say that 20% of those people see enough compelling content offered in the live chat to actually engage. Sadly, if you think this is low, it's actually pretty realistic. Many people open live chat or chatbot chat and don't engage, right? They open, they see the options, and if it's compelling enough, they'll chat. If it's not, they might move on. So let's just assume it's a 20% engagement rate. They actually start chatting with live chat. That would give us 1,000 engagements. Engagements meaning conversations, two-way conversations. So we took 100,000, we're down to 1,000 conversations. Well, now hopefully all of you can do the math, even though it's 3 in the afternoon, and know that conversion rate here to lead is 30%. So we're taking those 1,000 that we're chatting with, and 30% of them we're converting to a lead. That is 30% of them we're able to say, now what's your name and number, and can I follow up with you? And I get their contact information. So our objective now is optimizing these 3 metrics. So I know we're throwing tons of metrics at you, but we're drilling into just this stage. We need to get more people to open the chat, more people to engage the chat, and more people to convert. And if we do that, we're improving our 300. And the question we're going to pose is, can artificial intelligence and chatbots provide a better enough experience to what the consumer trends that Pierrette mentioned are, that we can take small improvements? Can we take that 5% open rate and make it 6%? Can we take 20% engagement rate and make it 25%? Can we take a 30% engagement rate and with AI and chatbots, let's say it actually does a little worse. Let's just say it goes down to 28%. So we convert 28% of those we chat with instead of 30.
That was one area where we talked about there could be a disengagement from some portion of the population that wants a more human interaction or a more emotional interaction. So we said, even if we actually downgrade ourselves in that one category, what does it do to the metrics?
Absolutely. And with that, let's give you a quick preview of what this looks like. This is a video of an example of a chatbot that is deployed. This is all real. Nothing you're seeing here is fake. So this is a chatbot that can engage you in the middle of the night and can help you if you're looking for a new home, right? You can click buttons. And we'll quickly.
So yeah, it can kind of serve up either a guided search, right, where you're clicking on buttons and it's helping to guide your path, or there's also options for freeform type in, like that 200K.
Exactly, and we'll tie some of these things together in a second, because you'll see that some of these things need to happen, as Pierrette alluded earlier, at 2 in the morning, right? If I'm at 2 in the morning and I want to do a search and find out about the community amenities, I can do it automatically. One thing I'd like everyone to know, a chatbot is nowhere near as smart as a human. It's not meant to be as smart as a human, but it's pretty damn good at 2 in the morning. It's super, it works brilliantly, right? And it does what it's supposed to really, really well. At the right moment, it captures the lead. That lead at 1 in the morning, at 2 in the morning, at 3 in the morning, and it'll actually give you some crazy metrics that will really surprise you about how often this sort of thing happens.
Well, and what we discussed with the consumer not really wanting to engage until a little bit deeper into the funnel, this serves the purpose of that very preliminary top of funnel search, right? So it's not as smart as a human, but can it handle the majority of those initial question and answers that a customer will have about your projects and communities?
Exactly. I don't know if you noticed. Did someone? All right,
Throw
cool.
in some humor.
A few people smiled. That's great. Someone's looking at the conversation. Right, so it can have a very, as Pierrette alluded, a very comfortable guided experience, but likewise, you can do freeform text. This is the important thing. I can talk to it in English, but I could also, and it will answer in English, and this is something that we as humans struggle with, and that's speaking lots and lots of languages. So what if we asked it something in Spanish? And to those who speak Spanish in the room, hopefully that was typed correctly. So the chatbot can instantly go, oh, that person spoke Spanish, I'll gladly respond back in Spanish. In fact, I'll change the entire interface to Spanish or Mandarin or Farsi or Hindi, right? That's something I can do at 2 in the morning. And all of that while, I can give it its own identity with its own branding, and it matches my branding and personality and so on, right? Yeah, maybe we'll show just a couple more seconds of this, and then we'll move on.
But this is another thing we hear a lot from like internet home consultants, is that there's a lot of people that are in their chat window that shouldn't really be in the sales and marketing function. It's a homeowner looking for warranty, or it's somebody under construction who wants to be routed to corporate. And so it can help even with that, kind of funneling the right people so that your team is interacting with the highest, most valuable interactions.
Absolutely. So we can also do crazy stuff like this, where you can give it all the parameters in a long sentence and have the chatbot deconstruct it.
And the speed at which it's delivering the content. We'll get into some of that, I think, on our next slide, but how quickly people these days are distracted and moving on to something else if you're not serving them exactly what they need when they want it.
So as a math and computer nerd, I love this just because it's awesome. But that doesn't matter if it's not impacting the customer journey. It doesn't matter how cool, sexy, fancy it is if it's not affecting those metrics. So let's talk about why this makes a difference. Why do AI chatbots in an experience like this impact the metrics we were just talking about? And let's quickly go through Pierrette's 6 points around the modern consumer and discuss those very quickly, how that difference is happening. So the first thing we're finding time and time again is we nowadays are unbelievably impatient. We will abandon a website or live chat within 6 seconds. Within 6 seconds, and that's at 2 in the afternoon or 2 in the morning. How are we expected to possibly be able to engage someone, a consumer, that expects that sort of cadence? It's impossible, right? It's nearly impossible for an online sales counselor to be stuck doing that all the time. So could we have the bot taking care of that and handing the lead to the sales counselor to then deal with on a more real-time basis on their own schedule, as opposed to being glued every second? So do we believe that that would impact the engagement rate? Absolutely, and we're seeing that every day. The second, and Pierrette alluded to this already, it's this behavior that we describe as the I'm just looking. You know, how many people have walked onto a car dealership and like they could see the salespeople running to them and they're like, I'm just looking, please, just leave me alone, right? We, early on in our journey, we're not ready yet. We're just doing research, we're checking things out. We found that people are, when they're searching on the website, they're 2.5 times more likely to click chat if they think it's a chatbot than if they think it's a human. 2.5 times. Not 20% more, 2.5 times. Crazy. And it's because they know, oh, I'm not going to be talking to a live salesperson. I'm just doing quick searches and figuring what I want out. Content is king, as Pierrette said, and a chatbot can serve you content on demand, content that's already on your website. As we said, purchasers don't sleep. Well, we'll quantify it for you. 2/3 of conversations happening with our chatbots happen after hours. 2/3. 1/3 during office hours. 2/3 on weekends and in the evenings. And that's across the board. 10 to 13%, we've been talking about foreign language speakers. 10 to 13%, depending on your market, depending on the segment you're targeting, are foreign speakers. And finally, one of the cool things about chatbots is they can capture direct feedback from the consumer and allow you to look at trends and predict trends very, very quickly and very early on and react to them. So if we go back here and ask ourselves, can we impact the open rate from 5% to 6% if we're getting 2.5 times more clicks because it's an automated system that can respond quickly? The second, can we take engagement rate from 20% to 25% if we're covering 24/7, 365 instead of just 8 hours or 9 hours a day? And finally, let's just say that a bot, it's not a human. Let's discount. Let's say it doesn't convert as well. And we could actually drop that further, although believe it or not, that seems to be realistic these days based on our empirical evidence. Because now we can sort of replay the equation backwards or forwards again and say, okay, we're starting with the same 100,000 visitors. Now we're going to have 6,000 opens. Just one more percent gives you 6,000 opens. Now we're going to have 1,500 engagements because we're multiplying by 25% from 6,000. And now we're going to have a conversion rate of 420. So with just those tweaks, we're going to have 420 leads, which now let's keep the gross profit. We haven't changed the gross profit, so it stays the same, 3,600. Multiply that out, and we come up with $1.5 million. So just those little tweaks resulted in a 40% increase in gross profit. 40%. And again, the math works. The math allows you to do this calculation. If we now zoom back out to the big macro picture, what we've essentially done, you remember the lead conversion that said 0.3%? We've now taken that to 0.42%. Hopefully you guys can see that from the back. And that 0.42 took the 1.08 to 1.5. You guys like the accounting class? Okay. What if we can do the same exercise we just did there to prospect conversion? And what if we could just go from 25% to 29% because we automated some steps and accounted for some of these principles that consumer trends are driving these days? What if we could take buyer conversion, just go from 20% to 24%? So now we take all three together because we're not going to change gross margin, and that now allows us to say, okay, well, the 300 leads becomes 420, the 75 prospects becomes 122, and the 15 buyers becomes 29. We've almost doubled the number of buyers with these really small tweaks in each of our steps. You multiply that out, and you come up with $2.1 million in gross profit. Is it worth those tuning to make $2.1 million on 29 on these buyers, right, instead of 1.08? Now, if we go backwards on the KPIs, we're not going to change the gross profit again. We're still making the same, but look how it changes our 14,000 per prospect. Our prospects now are worth an extra $3,000 because that's the portion we optimized. Our leads are now worth 5,000 per lead instead of 3,600. And our gross profit per visitor, now does it justify you spending money? So any ad agencies here, you'll love this, right? Because now they should spend more money with you. We builders need to spend more money driving more traffic because every visitor is worth incrementally more, because I'm not just now driving them to my site and having nothing happen. Instead, I'm driving them to my site and I have a funnel that's efficiently walking them through. So again, the whole theme for us and for you that we'd love to have you walk out of here believing is track these metrics and focus on small improvements. We actually call it, at Atlas, we call it best today, better tomorrow. Just little improvements every day. We deconstruct our own business in exactly this way. We're a software company, and we do exactly that. Can we just get a little better here, a little better there, a little better there? A year goes by, and suddenly you are doubling and tripling your impact from those small changes. And with that, I'll turn it to questions.
Yeah, so we've been gathering questions from the crowd. I'm going to serve some of these up, and Bassam and I'll attempt to answer them for you. So from Elizabeth, she said, where are all the number of visitors from? Are they visitors from the web page, visitors from walk-ins, or all together?
Very, very, very good question, Elizabeth. So where's Elizabeth? All right, fantastic. I'm sorry, I won't call everybody out otherwise. So Elizabeth, the way you think about it is you have to deconstruct each channel and analyze the effectiveness of each channel, because when you optimize, you're going to have to optimize for that channel. So you're going to optimize if you're talking about an email channel versus a live chat channel versus a phone channel. You'll have to take and do that path for each of them independently. You could also track it in aggregate if you want to see how you're doing as a marketing function, but to do something, to actually act on it, you're going to have to deconstruct it. Really good question.
And I would say too, the easiest place for most marketers in home building to probably look at visitors and pull that out of your business is on the website. So if you have a pretty robust website and either you're managing it in-house or with an agency that's tracking the number of visitors and unique visitors that come to your site, that's the number you want to pull and plug into this metric. So the visitors is before they've physically visited a community. Our next question, Erica, so kind of somewhat similar, but please define the difference between a visitor and a lead. And so, do you want to take that one?
Sure, yes, absolutely. So a visitor is an anonymous person who has visited your website in the website use case, right, in that channel. A lead is a visitor who has enough interest to have given you their contact information, because you can't engage them if they haven't given you your contact information. So visitor, anonymous, lead, has identity. You know who they are. Good question.
Allison, what chatbot platform are you using?
Great question. That's my favorite one. That is actually our company. It's AtlasRTX is the name of the chatbot platform that we build, that we deliver to home builders.
Yeah. And as a home builder, I've seen some iterations of technology, but I have never engaged or seen really in the market, even walking through this entire conference center, one that is truly honed in and focused in our industry specifically. Mary, how does the chatbot know how to respond to buyers' questions? Does that come from my team? There's a second piece, but let's answer that first one.
Very good question. So we train chatbots. So when we launch a chatbot,
send it out into the world.
We send it out into the world. It's sort of a baby Yoda chatbot. Not quite. It looks cool. It's very cute, but it needs to get smarter. And today, AI, artificial intelligence, it's beyond the state of the art to let the chatbot get smarter on its own. We talk about that in computer science. It's technically possible for a very restricted domain, but we're not there yet in computer science. So we have to use humans to monitor the engagements and improve and refine and train a bot. And it goes from a baby Yoda to a tween to a teen to eventually an adult chatbot. Really good question.
And what's interesting in our industry, as much as we all, it's complicated, but there are a lot of consistencies in the types of questions that customers are asking. And so some of those can very quickly get established, right? Atlas has done this with enough builders now that initial bot that they launch is already pretty smart from the aggregate data that it's received. And then it comes down to honing and tweaking to your specific business. I think the biggest thing that we probably ask of the builder in this scenario is sort of that voice, that brand voice that you want to have the bot reflect. Those are things that you would personalize yourself.
Very good.
Okay, how does the chatbot know when there's pricing changes, new information added to the site? Does anyone need to feed it, or does it learn from our website?
Man, these are really
This is
good
a
questions.
sophisticated
I'm like,
team
holy
out
cow.
here. I like it.
I almost want to ask who that is, but
API.
don't worry. Yeah. Yeah, so again, a few years ago, this was not possible, but today, chatbots are actually we're able to configure them where they go look in data sources. So for example, the chatbot that you saw here is called BuilderBot, and it happens to leverage BDX Live and BDX data. It's a BDX integrated product, and it's pulling all that data from BDX, the BDX feed, in real time. So as that changes, it automatically knows the communities, the prices, the floor plans, and so on.
So you kind of get to update it in one location, and it's feeding everything else real time.
Really good questions.
Chris, do you disclose that the consumer is talking with a chatbot versus a real human?
Absolutely. In fact, we recommend you disclose, because if you disclose, you're going to get more chat opens than if they think they're going to talk to a human right away.
2.5 times experience was through A/B testing. that Atlas has done with different builders to say, if I put a cute picture of Bassam and say live chat with me, or I put a picture of a bot, which one are they more likely to engage with?
Absolutely. Gone are the days where you're talking to Jackie and we all know it's not Jackie, it's just a picture of Jackie. That doesn't work. We need to be upfront. We show them the bot. And then if a human chooses to engage, and that's possible, we could talk about that separately, then absolutely the identity of the human can be exposed, but they need to know that they're talking to a chatbot, and we've actually found it to be more effective at getting them to be willing to engage, which is crazy.
It's actually really cool, even in the platform, because the whole point is chatbots and humans better together. There is a stage in this conversation where a human should engage if the person is really interested. And so you want to be able to identify. So you'll be in mid-chat, and it looks like a little chatbot icon. And then let's say I have to jump in because the questions are getting more complicated, or I see like an opportunity, right? That this is somebody who's going to convert and is really interested. I want to take over for the bot. It actually then changes to my picture. So the person on the other end never feels like they aren't being, trusting the brand. It's very, very apparent. Okay, I think we have just a couple more minutes, so a few more questions. Megan, what happens if someone engages with a chatbot in another language, but the salesperson can't speak other languages? How could you continue the omni-channel experience?
Again, so freaking cool that you guys ask these questions. So the chatbot can both work on behalf as the assistant, essentially, to the salesperson, but also in real time serve as the translator. So the salesperson can be updated in their native language, in this case mostly English, but their native language. So this is really cool. You could, because the chatbot is able to speak over 100 languages, you could have a salesperson who speaks German and a site visitor who speaks Spanish, and the chatbot is in between, talking in one language on this side and translating on the other side. And if the salesperson now chooses to engage in their native language, in this particular case German, the chatbot would then translate it to whatever I said the other one was, Spanish. I've already forgotten. So
whatever it is, it doesn't matter, it'll translate it.
Exactly. And then you as a user of the system will always get it in your native language. Again, this is the cool stuff the technology now enables, right? It's amazing what's happening. And I'm telling you, this is the culmination of a few decades of computer science, but we're really on the cusp of greatness over the coming decade. The kinds of capabilities we're going to all be able to enable with conversational experiences. All of this stuff is conversational experiences. Whether it's oral, spoken, whether it's typed, it's going to be incredible.
And it works really well, again, with conversational translation, right? Like, we're not talking about legal disclaimers and things that get really complicated, but the way most people are interacting in a home purchase is a very conversational experience, and the technology is there now to be very accurate.
Absolutely. If I could actually make a comment, because we've seen this lately that's been quite funny. We've actually had cases, many cases, where a human could read something and go, I get that, and the chatbot doesn't know. We've now started to see the other way around, where a human looks at it and goes, what are they? I have no idea what they're saying. And it's not just because it's a foreign language, it's just a very poorly formed sentence, or I don't know. But the chatbot can see the pattern, the linguistic pattern, and go, I get what you're asking, which is kind of crazy to think about. So, theoretically, over time, we can really enhance these experiences where we're accounting for those kinds of expectations.
Okay, 2 more quick questions. So, I hope I don't mispronounce this. Pavel asks, can the entire website change the language that the person wants to speak?
Good question.
Not yet.
The answer is no, not yet. And this leads to Pierrette's point. While machine translation, computers that are able to translate, works really well now for segments, for conversational sentences, it does not work well if you have paragraphs on a website. It's going to be good enough, but it's not great. So the experience is very different conversationally, and we're not quite there to be able to translate the site in real time.
Okay, and then last one. what if they ask your chatbot on a date?
We could write a book of the funniest conversations we have seen and what we as consumers are willing to say to a chatbot when we don't think someone's watching. It's crazy.
Yes, you get much more authentic interactions when you're monitoring your chatbot. So thank you so much, everyone. If you want more information,
yes.
we do have our booth for the AtlasRTX booth.
Please come by if you'd like to see us, or if you text in the word meeting, you'll actually be able to schedule a meeting with Pierrette and me. So you can just text in the word meeting into the text thread that you have, and it will actually, the bot will help you and allow you to schedule it. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.